how it is a specialized treatment in that you have to know what you're doing, because if we didn't move fast and those towels got cold, they would be very uncomfortable. And that's why we use the garbage bags. They're not actually touching the skin, they're just keeping all the warmth in. And he's got 2 woolen blankets under him, and I'm thankful to honour. I just love this really thick woolen blanket. It just keeps that warmth in. So you have to have wool to do this treatment. The only other thing you could do is wrap the whole body in plastic, but you know, wool's nicer because it does breathe a little bit. And that's what some people do, is they'll put plastic over that as well. But these blankets are so thick and good that that's all that you really need. Yes?
Sodium goes into the body tissues. So I forgot, what does it do? What's it doing?
Alkalize. You see, in the stomach lining, there's sodium bicarbonate. And the sodium bicarbonate is the stomach lining, so that if any stomach acid goes through, it neutralizes it. And your pancreas releases sodium bicarbonate, because as the stomach acid and food comes out of the stomach into the duodenum is an alkaline environment, and it needs to be alkaline for the other enzymes to work, as you'll see tonight. And so the pancreas releases sodium bicarbonate to neutralize that. Sodium bicarbonate is a natural substance. Some people say, well, can't I just drink sodium bicarbonate? All you would do is neutralize your stomach acid, and you need the stomach acid to break down the food. But to get it into the tissues, you do this. Or the other thing that neutralizes and alkalizes the tissues is green drinks. So we also are giving green drinks. So basically I say to people, cancer hasn't got a hope in your body once you do all this. On Saturday morning, I'll discuss one more aspect, and that is the mental aspect. If we're doing all this to someone and they're angry and bitter and are harbouring unforgiveness in their heart, this isn't going to do a lot. So the mind is an important thing to do. So you see, it's a whole picture. I had a lady, we'd wrapped her up. She had breast cancer, and we left her for 15 minutes, and we left the door open, and the wind shut the door. And she started to get very afraid and very anxious. And I had 2 staff members checking her, and one thought that they'd checked her and the other thought the other checked her. So she went over half an hour, actually 3/4 of an hour, with anyone coming in. And when they came in, she was quite beside herself. So we quickly dealt with that, and we just quickly got her out, and we just said, we'll just give you another one on the house, because you shouldn't have been left. Most people are fine. Most people just fall asleep. But these 2 staff members misunderstood. They thought, anyway, she talked to me later and she said, it's really interesting, because she said, I am not like that. I don't get anxious and I don't get stressed. So I laid there analysing, why am I freaking out here? And she said, when I was a little girl, my father used to beat up my mother. And she said, one day I was so hating the noise of the mother being beaten up that she ran into a bedroom, got into a cupboard and shut the door, and she could not open the door. And it was a long time before anyone found her. So she said, I realised that when that door shut, all these emotions came up from when she was a little girl. She said, you know what? I can have a wrap now and you can leave me for an hour. I'm okay. I analysed it. I worked out what it was. So as soon as she knew what it was, she thought, oh, that old thing. Interesting. One lady, I wrapped her up and she said, I can't stay in here. I said, why not? I can't move. I said, you can. Have you noticed that everything's wrapped separately? So if Joshua wanted, he could move his arms down there. He could move his arms up there. You can move. I said, you can. And everything she put to me, I said, it's all right. I'm getting claustrophobia. I said, your sister's here. She'll be with you the whole time. So every fear she brought up, I was able to negate it. And then I said, by the way, why are you doing this? She looked at me. For my kids and my husband. I said, good. Anyway, her sister was there and she stayed the hour. The next day, about 10 minutes before I had to do the wrap, I said, "Are you ready for your wrap?" She said, "No." She said, "Do I have to have it?" I said, "No." And there was this bit of a battle, not a battle, but and I stood there and I said, "Let us know. I mean, there's a lot of prep for this." She said, all right. And she was perfectly fine. In fact, the third wrap, she just jumped in and everything was perfectly fine. And that's what I'll talk about tomorrow. Sometimes the things that we think are the most fearsome are actually not fearsome. Sometimes it's our thoughts. But most people look forward to this because nice. Yeah, it's much better than that stuff yesterday, eh? See, with that hot and that cold. But this is actually a very pleasant treatment. Yes. What does the hyperbaric do? It's actually inhaling it and some into the skin. Henry's law, it is a basic scientific law. Henry's law states that under pressure, more liquid will more back. Henry's law states that more gas will go into liquid under pressure. That's Henry's law. And in a hyperbaric chamber, pressure is built up, and so the gas is oxygen, and we're pumping in pure oxygen.
Oh, it's not air, it's oxygen.
We're pumping in oxygen. You've got pressure and oxygen's been pumped in, and the liquid, of course, is blood. Now, do you remember, I've done this a couple of times in the lectures, so I'll recap because I know that I'm guilty of information overload. There's the cell. Remember, the glucose goes in and there's a 20-step pathway, and this 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy, and the end result of that pathway is pyruvate, and pyruvate gets fed into the 8-step pathway, and the 8-step pathway gives us 36 units of energy. Now, every single cell in the body runs on energy. What makes the difference is oxygen. There's no oxygen up here. In fact, this pathway produces energy by the process of fermentation. This is where cancer cells run. So if you pump the body full of oxygen, you're actually forcing cancer cells to get down to there. And these cells, remember what they consume? 15 times the glucose, because this cell here is a very fast cell. This cell is a very slow cell or pathway. That explains it. They developed hyperbaric chambers for divers, got the bends, because air is 21% oxygen and 79% nitrogen with about a 0.3 of a carbon dioxide. And when they come up too quickly, the nitrogen can't all be released and it goes into little bubbles in the joints, and that's the bends. And when they go into a hyperbaric chamber, because they pump that oxygen in, basically the nitrogen just dissipates and is breathed out. And they discovered that wound healing of any sort increases when oxygen increases. So that's a That's right. If you're going to go to all this effort, basically, if I had a friend and I lived here and I was a housewife or I worked, and I had a friend that had cancer and I'd heard about this, and I'd get a couple of friends together and say, I think we can do this. So we'll say to our friend, we're willing to go to all this effort to do these treatments on you, but you've got to play your part. And if the lady says, oh no, I like my sugar, I'd say, okay. That's it. It's a choice. But if you've got a friend who's, she said, I'm going to do this, the effort she puts in, encourages you to put this effort in. Not necessarily, you could do it the day after she started. This gives a mighty boost to the healing in the body. It can actually tip the scales. I think I told you about the man who owned the strawberry farm, prostate cancer. He was here for 2 weeks. His wife and daughter were gung-ho and he was just all right. Well, we did 5 of these. 1 week, 5 the next week. They didn't do it when they go home because